Hey, I'm Isaac Schanno Johnson. If you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff. Music composition, music production. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. So today's video is going to be about sight reading, how we can get better at it, how we can practice it. Learning to sight read can be really useful, especially if you want to be performing and playing and regularly doing that. It's especially useful if you're learning a whole musical and you need to direct a whole musical. So I've learned a couple things about sight reading from having to play gigs where you have one rehearsal and then you have to play it, or you don't have any rehearsal other than talking through the music or something like that. So I have some tips, stuff that I do to make it a little easier on you when you're sight reading music. First thing I do whenever I'm looking at a piece of music or gonna learn it or going to sight read it is I notice everything. I notice the time signature, I notice the key, I notice the modulations, I notice any repetitions of music, any formal things, meaning the form of the music, anything like that that I can notice. I literally talk it through with myself. Now it sounds kind of weird, and before you get used to it, it feels a little weird, but talk through every different piece of the music that you can see. Look at the music and say to yourself, okay, we're in 4/4, we're in the key of F major, we have a quarter note pickup at the beginning, we start on an F chord, I see some quarter notes, I see some eighth notes, then we go to a B flat chord, I see some quarter notes, I see some eighth notes, I see a couple 16th notes. Literally talk through everything that you see in the music. It will help you so much when you're having to play that music because all of that stuff isn't going to be new to you. You're not going to be seeing it for the first time. Sight reading, you often think about, here's a piece of music, all right, play it now, go. But if you have time to look at the music, even if it's a gig where you have to play that music that day, you're gonna have some time to look at it, even if it's 5 minutes before you play it. I've done this a lot from playing musicals. I won't be given the music director book until the day of the first rehearsal. Sometimes it's auditions, which is even worse because then I'm worried about messing up for the person that's singing. But if I've given the music before, there's always an introduction or something. There's some amount of time that I can look through the music, figure out what is going on, and make sure that I'll be able to play something when I need to be able to play something. So just talk it through. What key is it in? What time signature is it in? Are there any changes in those? Are there any accidental notes? Are there any rhythms that you think are going to be easy? Any rhythms that you think are going to be hard? Does the music ever repeat? Do you ever have repeat sections like repeat signs or da capos or del segno? Or is there a coda? How much page turning are you going to have to do? All of this stuff is just stuff to know about the music to try and learn as quickly as you can and make it as familiar as you can before you have to play through it. Another thing to look for is get used to looking for what will be difficult and what's going to be easy. I had to learn Mamma Mia last summer. The first thing I did when I got the book and I started learning the music was I flipped through it like a magazine. I looked for what songs are going to be easy that I might not have to practice a whole lot, what songs are going to be more difficult that I might have to sit down and play first. Thankfully, I wasn't sight reading that show at the first rehearsal. I had some time to look at it, but when I was learning the music, I thought of it as sight reading. For Honey Honey, before the first rehearsal, I may have played through that song once because I could look at it and say, okay, this is a simple chord progression. There's not really any key changes. It's relatively the same groove throughout the whole thing, so I'm not gonna have to practice that one as much. But one of the other songs, it's a little faster, maybe it has a little more changes, I might have to practice that one. So always a good thing to think about what's gonna be hard, what's gonna be difficult. It can be especially helpful if you're learning a piece of music that has a rhythm that's difficult. Being able to see that rhythm and know that's gonna give me trouble, that'll let you know that before you play the show or before you play the rehearsal or the piece of music or whatever it is, practice that rhythm in your head a little bit. Make sure you can kind of figure it out, understand it, get a general sense of what that rhythm's gonna be so that you don't have to go into it right away knowing it's gonna be hard and kind of not playing it very well. Get used to looking ahead. This one feels really weird when you're first getting used to it, but it can be helpful when you're sight reading music, especially when you're sight reading music and it is literally the first time you're playing it. Get used to looking a couple beats or maybe a bar ahead of where you're playing. This one's weird. You might have to do it with easy music. Find a piece that you used to play or something that you know is going to be fairly easy. When I practiced this, I did it with Bela Bartok's Mikrokosmos series of books on piano. You could do this with the real book on piano or guitar. Look at what's coming up so that when you need to play it, you're ready. You're gonna have to do it with easier music because you're gonna need music where you're able to look ahead. If the music's so difficult that you kind of need to figure out the rhythms as you're literally playing through it, it's gonna be harder to look ahead. So maybe choose music that is sight readable, where the first time sounds pretty good, and then the second time will be almost spot on. This one might not be specifically sight reading, but simplify the music if you have to. This one might not feel really great because you want to be able to play the actual version, you want to be able to play what's actually on the page, but if it's the first time you're playing through it, get a general idea of how the music goes first. Get a general idea of the form, of where the changes are, of what's going to be difficult, what you're going to have to learn, what you're going to have to work on. And gonna be honest, if you're playing something like accompanying a singer and it's not classical music, it's maybe jazz or pop music or musical theater, and you're playing an accompaniment for them, they probably won't know if you leave out a couple notes, right? Now you have to make sure they're the right notes to leave out, but generally if you leave out a couple really fancy things, people won't notice that you're leaving them out. So let's say you're playing something like Go the Distance on piano. I have a video of that on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And there's a part where you have octaves in your left hand and block chords in your right hand. On piano, for example. If you're sight reading that, get rid of the octaves. Just play the chord part in your right hand and just play one note as your left hand bass note. Those things, they're kind of like little details that you don't necessarily need. So you can kind of leave them out the first time. See what you can leave out and still get the general idea. You want to keep the rhythmic groove the same, and you want to keep the harmony the same, and the general accompaniment shape. But if there are notes that you can leave out that you don't necessarily need to have, take them out the first time you're reading through it. What if you play just the bass note and the melody on piano, for example? Can you sight read that? Look at the chord symbols, see if you can play block chords and just the melody. None of the fancy accompaniment stuff, no fancy rhythms, no fancy double octaves and block chords, just bass note and melody on guitar. Maybe all of the different types of seventh chords are kind of overwhelming. Just do triads, just do major minor. See how that works, see if you can simplify it. Now, you do want to add in all the fancy stuff eventually because it sounds sick. And if you're playing something with seventh chords are part of the music, so you want to be able to play it. But try doing that. Add all of that stuff later, but try and sight read it through with just a simple version. It doesn't matter if you don't want to play that simple version. See how much that'll help by already having an idea of what the song is, where it goes, and what the changes are, and what the form of the song is. It'll give you an idea of the song that you can then use to then build on and add more stuff to, so that later it'll be easier to play the fancy stuff. Next one is not necessarily while you're sight reading, something you can do, but learn a ton of music. I know this one just kind of sucks to hear. Learning a ton of music is the best thing that's helped me with my sight reading. I've been playing piano at a community theater for a couple years, and when I first started, my sight reading was okay. Now, it's gotten a whole lot better because I've played 8 other musicals since then. I've learned, 8 plus hours of music that I've had to play and perform and learn and be able to read, right? And that's one thing that's helped me a ton with my sight reading, is just learning a lot of music. The reason that helps is because you know the pattern. If you're sight reading a piece of music and you've never played a C major chord before and it starts with a C major chord, that's going to be harder to sight read. But if you've played 30 other songs that have a C major chord and are in C major, that song's going to be a lot easier because, well, you'll probably find a similarity between that song and one of the other songs in C major. It doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't even have to be tonal music, but music has patterns and conventions and things, rhythms that are repeated and certain ideas that are repeated. So when you're learning lots of music and remembering lots of music and performing lots of music, you're remembering and internalizing all of those patterns so that when you come to a new piece of music that you haven't heard or haven't played, you have all of that knowledge with you that you can then apply to this new song. You can look at it and be like, oh yeah, cool, 1, 4, 5, great, I can play that. Or maybe you look at it and you're like, cool, it's a whole bunch of 2/5s and they're a multitonic system. Whatever music it is, it doesn't matter. It could be something that's not even tonal, but how your instrument is played in other songs is going to help you with that, because there will be certain patterns, certain techniques that are shared. And the more techniques, the more patterns you know, the easier it'll be to read that new piece of music. Again, not necessarily sight reading, but write in chord symbols. I know it might mean that you need to look at the music beforehand, and then it's not technically sight reading, but let's be honest, if you're playing a gig and you haven't seen the music before and you need to play it at the first rehearsal and at that gig that day, no one's gonna care if you write in chord symbols. No one's gonna look at it and be like, nah, well, they weren't technically sight reading. No one's gonna care. They're gonna be happy that you played the gig well. And that's what matters. I do this all the time. I recently had to learn Seussical the musical. So I took the music before rehearsals. I would write in whatever the chord symbols were. I'd listen to the music, make sure I got a rhythmic idea of it, and then I would go and play it. Now, this is kind of borderline learning the music versus sight reading, but even in a rehearsal, if I was reading a piece of music the first time and there were no chord symbols, and after reading through it, I kind of struggled, I'll just write in chord symbols really quickly above everything. Something simple, probably wouldn't include inversions if I didn't have time, but I would write in something quick. I might simplify them a little bit, so rather than writing a D flat major 9 chord, I'd just write D flat. Or rather than writing an E7 flat 9 sharp 9 13, I might just write E7. I'll write in some quick chord symbols, some quick notes about where it's going, so that then that'll help me when I perform it, and I can sort of check my notes and then check the music, and then I'll know what to play. And this goes for anything. Write in notes if you have to. Halfway through a rehearsal, if you get a chance to stop, circle the key changes, circle the time signature changes. Write in subdivisions of bars that are confusing if you're playing in odd meters like 7/8 or 5/8 or even 9/8 or 11/8 sometimes. Give yourself notes. Think of ways that you can help yourself later. You write the sections. You write A, then A prime, then B, then A again. Or you write in chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, or whatever the form of the song is. You write in quick notes for yourself after the first time you sight read it, so that then the next time you read it, next time you play it through, it sounds a lot better. Whatever honestly will help you play better, I think is something that you should do. And the final thing I'm gonna leave you guys with is that it takes time. I know that sucks to hear. It's horrible, especially if there's something that you want to be good at right away. But the main thing I've learned from playing a lot of music is that working at it consistently is going to be the main thing that'll help you get better at it. Consistently picking away at that skill is going to be what'll cause you to be the best at that skill that you can be. You might have to slog through some at the beginning when you start, but that's part of the process. You will get better at it if you work at it consistently and you try to improve it. A common one for piano is either the real book or hymns or chorales by Bach. Hymns and chorales because you're working on vertically reading the music because they're all block chords basically, and you're learning how to read chords really quickly and identify everything really quickly. Now, real book, you're working on your chordal reading and your melodic reading. So for guitar, the real book is great. If you really wanted to, try sight reading some simple classical guitar stuff. It'll really work your treble clef reading because you're having to read 2 lines most of the time. I'm personally a big fan of theater music, so if you have a musical that you really like, order the book. Most of them are pretty cheap if you can afford it. If not, you can probably look up the chords or the sheet music somewhere online for free. Musescore.com is a great resource for this. Same with Sheet Music Plus and musicnotes.com. Not sponsored, but talk to me, guys. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something about music. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.